Hello everybody, welcome back to the table. Today we have something of a controversial knife on the table. This is the Rigger EDC made by Magpul. So this run of the Rigger EDC uses an aluminum frame lock and a blade with S35 VN steel. The overall length of this knife when it's opened comes in at 7.5 inches, and the blade length has about 3 inches of cutting edge. This knife also weighs about 3.53 ounces. So we're going to take a close look at this knife and explain maybe, why it's so controversial in my opinion. But I have wanted the Rigger ever since Magpul released this knife in its limited edition form. That version of the Rigger was a titanium frame lock with micarta scales. It was priced fairly high at over $400, but for US production, limited numbers, name brand recognition, I could understand why the price was so high. I do find that I loved the overall shape and design of the knife, and so I decided to wait for a less expensive production version, and that is exactly what we have here. So while the limited runs of this knife sold out near instantly, as of filming this video at least, the production Rigger EDC is still in stock at Magpul's website. But let's take a closer look at the Rigger EDC. The S35 VN blade has a stonewash finish, and looking at the show side of the blade and the knife as a whole, it's completely sterile. We just have clean lines looking back at us. On the spine of the blade though, there is some jimping up here present. Now I would have loved to see some jimping on the frame as well, but having some I guess is, better than none at all, I suppose. On the reverse side of the blade, we can see that they listed the blade steel as well as the Made in USA mark. So what is also kind of neat is that the pivot here incorporates the Magpul logo as well. So unlike most folding knives I've handled, we have more to see on the lock side of the knife than we do on the so-called show side. The blade here runs on bearings, and out of the box it was fairly gritty. It didn't flip very well. I did add some Tough Glide lubricant to the pivot area, and now it does flip better. It feels a bit more smooth than it did before. And so this is a rather rare bird in that this is an aluminum frame lock knife. And so as you can see, we definitely here have a steel lock insert that contacts the blade's lock face. So take a look at the lockup on the blade. And once we close the knife, you can check out the centering. The centering looks good, and the tolerances of the knife make everything look nice and tightly put together. And a somewhat unique feature we have here is a secondary lock on the frame lock action. So the pivot collar here can actually swivel back and forth, and it kind of locks in and out of place. And you can effectively use this to lock the knife in the open position for some extra safety while you're using it. I think it's a pretty clever feature to have. I have seen similar style locks on some knives, like some Lion Steels have a similar style lock, but still it's really nice to have it in case you ever need that extra feature. So while using aluminum for the frame is somewhat rare from what I've noticed, it's also kind of strange that the pocket clip on this knife is also made of machined aluminum. It's actually a sculpted aluminum clip, and it's reversible for left or right hand carry, and it's going to be tip up carry. I kind of think aluminum is a somewhat strange choice of material here. It doesn't really flex at all. So I've noticed it's actually somewhat difficult to clip to your pants because the clip just does not have that much give to it. And looking back at the frame, this is basically bare aluminum color, and they put a clear anodizing on it. And it's so odd, they use bare aluminum given that you can do so much color-wise with aluminum as a material. I'm thinking that maybe future runs of this knife might be more colorful. I'm guessing depending on how well this one sells. And my particular knife here on the table has a rather odd feature, and I figured I would point this out. I don't know if they're all like this or if mine just had a defect that needed some fixing, but take a close look here at the lock face of the knife. You can see that, you might be able to see it, but they used either a Dremel or maybe a small round file to notch out a small part of the lock face. So this small notch, it lines up exactly where the detent ball rests on the frame lock. So I'm thinking they probably had to do this so that the knife would be easier to open and close in order to overcome that detent. It's kind of like a nice step up to do so. You know, I've only seen this done once before on a knife, and in a way it kind of does show there's some degree of hand finishing that had to occur before they sent this knife out the door. So I guess that's a good thing. But if you have this knife, tell me if yours has this as well. I'm kind of curious. But for the Magpul Rigger here, as much as I do like the design, of course, I am going to point out the strange controversy that seems to have appeared around this knife. So ever since Magpul jumped into the knife world, there have really been two camps of people out there, and it's really pretty polarizing. The first group of people are members of mostly the gun community, people who have owned Magpul gun stuff for years and years, and are either newbies in the knife world, or otherwise just not very knowledgeable about knives in general. I'm not saying that in a mean way, of course. You know, these Magpul fans, though, are absolutely incensed. They're upset that Magpul would release a knife that costs over $200, over $400, because, you know, for the average Joe out there, it's a lot to spend on a knife. You know, the general public, you know, non-knife people, you know, they're used to going to Walmart, going to a Bass Pro Shop, you know, they spend $30 on a knife and call it a day. You know, so the gnashing of teeth on social media, every time they post a picture of the Magpul EDC on their social media, you can just hear the gnashing and the upset people out there because they're just upset that the knife is so expensive. So now there's also the second group of people out there, of which I'm probably more a member of, and we're knife guys, you know, EDC guys, knife collectors even. We know a knife that's made domestically, it costs money to produce, and we're going to pay the price if it looks like the quality and the design is good. So no doubt in my mind that earlier limited runs of the Rigger in titanium were probably great knives. What really remains to be seen, though, is how a company like Magpul that is brand new to the knife world will really fare with such an exotic release like this. I don't think every knife guy is going to jump on board with an aluminum Framelock. And from what I know, 70-75 aluminum is pretty tough stuff, but there's really that stigma out there in the knife world that aluminum belongs on more inexpensive knives, and an expensive knife should be titanium. So that's just the widespread thought out there that I think. And as a knife guy, I am curious too about the production of this knife in general. It's made in the USA, which is excellent. But does Magpul make these in-house? Did they OEM this design to another company? I know in the US there are not too many places left that take on that kind of work. And if Magpul made the investment to produce this themselves, I can certainly see why the cost is higher than comparable designs from other, you know, established US knife companies that have been doing this for decades and decades. So a lot of controversy there, a lot of interesting questions I have there. But before I forget, let's take a quick look at the box the knife comes in. It's a full color box, very, very sturdy cardboard. And I think this would make for a really nice presentation if you got this as a gift for somebody. So maybe if you got this engraved for a wedding or a special occasion, I think it would make a really nice gift there. And moving on though, before we finish and talk about anything else, I want to compare the Rigger EDC here to some other US made EDC knives that I have on the table. So first we are going to compare the Rigger EDC to the Kershaw Blur. So the Blur here is another aluminum handled knife. So let's check these out side by side so you can get an idea of the size differences between these two knives. We're also going to compare the Rigger to the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. So the Mini Grip normally comes with plastic scales in various colors, but this particular model has upgraded titanium handles to look at. But let's see the size comparison here. And while we look at these, I just want to mention, wouldn't it be awesome though if Magpul made a knife with the polymer scales using the same polymer as their P-mags and their other gear? I think that would make for a pretty good look, and also the texture of that plastic is really nice. So it'd be nice to see them make another knife with that material somehow being used. I think that would be a great fit. Maybe not for this knife, but for maybe another knife in the future. So here now at the end of the video, I really want you to tell me what you all think of the Magpul Rigger EDC. Let me know in the comments below, and I hope you all have a knife day. Bye-bye.